Now I want to go to the phone lines and welcome in Olin Buchanan of TexAgs.com, a great outlet that covers the Texas A&M Aggies. Him, Gabe, Billy Lucci, and a bunch of those guys and gals do a fantastic job. Olin, appreciate you waking up so early this morning and joining us here on the Morning Rush.
My pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me.
So when you and Gabe pop on at 8 o'clock this morning, and it's a Wednesday morning, you're getting close to the Arkansas, Texas A&M, what is going to be the main driving point of y'all's conversation coming up in about an hour and a half?
Well, we'll probably start breaking down the matchup with Arkansas and trying to give our opinions on where A&M might have an advantage, where Arkansas might have an advantage, what's A&M's best way maybe to approach the game. I don't think Jimbo Fisher's going to pay any attention to what we have to say, but we'll give our opinion on, maybe the way the Aggies should, maybe what their strategy should be.
So let's start there, Olin. Where does Arkansas have an advantage in this game, and where does Texas A&M really have the distinct advantage in this one?
Well, now understand I don't get to see Arkansas play except a little bit on TV here and there. But I think that so I have to base it based on what I've seen from A&M. And A&M's pass defense has been inconsistent, I think is a good way to say it. Now, part of that's because they played Florida and Alabama. But the fact of the remains, they've been vulnerable to giving up big plays in the passing game. I know Felipe Franks can, throw it a country mile, and I think the kid's name's Mike Woods has done really well against A&M the last two games. So I think that's an area that A&M is vulnerable, and Arkansas may be able to exploit. I think that on the other side, it seems to me that Arkansas, especially in the last two games, has struggled a little bit in run defense, and A&M runs the ball very well. So I would think A&M's going to really rely heavily on Isaiah Spiller in the running game. That's been very productive, and maybe mix in what I would think is some high percentage passes to try to negate this epidemic of interceptions and pick sixes that Arkansas has.
Yeah, and you mentioned Isaiah Spiller. Olin, for Arkansas fans listening that haven't heard of this guy, this is one of the best running backs in the SEC. What kind of attributes make him the way he is?
Well, first of all, he almost rushed for 1,000 yards last year as a true freshman. Wasn't even expected to play. He got in there because the starter got hurt early in the season, and his backup didn't produce. Now, Isaiah, he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's fast enough. But he's very quick to the hole. He seems to just you hear about running backs having the vision, right, that they can see the holes and things like that, and that seems to be one of his greatest attributes. Is he just seems to see the hole. He does run with power. I don't know if you saw their game against, or any of the highlights of their game against Florida. They had a fourth down call, and he ran over a Florida linebacker. The guy just bounced right off of him and turned it into a 19-yard touchdown. So he runs with power. Like I said, he's not the fastest guy, but he's fast enough, and he's quick. He sees the hole, and he's quick through it.
Speaking with Olin Buchanan, TexAgs.com here on the Morning Rush. Olin, biggest news that came out of yesterday was Ross Bjork on that Facebook Live conversation, him talking about just where the game is going to be next year. It's going back to Jerry World. Hunter Yurchek verified that, but said it's not 100% concrete, basically. And we were playing a little Jerry Jones snippet before you came on, and I'm wondering, in your opinion, I'm of the opinion that Jerry had a big impact on this game going back to Jerry World next year. What is your opinion on that? Do you think he had a big motive behind getting that game back to his home place next year?
I would think so. I would think that this, just with COVID and everything, it's costing him money. And he's probably still paying on that stadium. So I would think he probably did. I'm sure it's a good revenue producer having that game, the A&M Arkansas game there. Maybe he wants to watch his Razorbacks and doesn't want to have to travel. Whatever. But yeah, I absolutely would think Jerry Jones had something to do with it. He's reminding them, like, hey, we've got a contract. Now, personally, I'd rather go up to Fayetteville next year. I think college football should be played on campus, and that's a great environment up there. And I'm really looking forward to when that contract runs out and we don't have to worry about it. But I would absolutely think that, that Jerry Jones that made a power play of some kind, because it was my understanding up until yesterday that the game was going to be played in College Station this year, Fayetteville next year, and then they were going to continue the contract.
And that was mine, too, because if you go back to Hunter Yurchek's comments when kind of the SEC schedule was shaking out, he was under that impression as well. So, Owen, I'm wondering if Jerry's one of the biggest, if not the biggest donor to the University of Arkansas. I'm wondering if Hunter Yurchek, Arkansas athletics director, his hands are kind of tied in this situation where there's really nothing he can do, even though he might want this game back in Fayetteville at least next year, that he can't really tick off one of his biggest donors.
Well, not only that, but one of his biggest donors has a contract.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like a double barrel thing. Not only do I have a contract that says you're supposed to play here, and 2020 has been a bizarre year and made an allowance. But I'm not only do I have that contract, but I'm your, like you said, one of your biggest donors. So Hunter probably didn't have a whole lot of that he could do.
So, Olin, you bring that up, and here was my thought, and a lot of other Arkansas fans thought: if you played in Fayetteville next year, could you push back the contract to 2026? Because it only runs up through 2024. That gives Jerry and the Dallas Cowboys an additional 2 games. Is that something, and again, this hasn't been 100% concrete, nailed down to what they're going to do next year. It looks like they're trending to play back in Jerry World, but could you see something like that happening where they push it back to 2026 if they give 2 more games, one in A&M this year and then in Fayetteville next year?
I guess you can always negotiate personally, and I would hope they would not do that. Again, I want to see the games back on campus as soon as possible, and I understand that would mean Fayetteville next year. But I'm talking about the series resuming and never changing. So I would not want to see 2 more. I think what you're saying is complete the 10-game contract and then add 2 more years to that. And I would just personally would like to see the 10-game contract finally come to an end as soon as possible. That said, I can certainly understand Arkansas's side of that and suggesting that as a negotiation point.
So, Olin, you bring up wanting to see these games go to College Station, Fayetteville. We're speaking with Olin Buchanan, TexAgs.com. It seems like the sentiment coming out of College Station is that 90-something% of Texas A&M fans and people within that athletic department want the games to be home and home. And I feel like it's a little closer in Fayetteville, where I don't know if it's 50-50, but there are some people that still want to go down to Dallas, people that want to go to Fayetteville. I wonder if Texas A&M is just completely, they're just going to have enough strength and enough power to just, once this contract is up, they're not going to renew it. It looks like it's trending that direction. Do you think this contract renews after 2024 in Dallas, Texas? Or I say that, Arlington.
Yeah, I don't. I don't think A&M is the current administration is interested in playing that game in Dallas. Understand, first of all, I think, again, they agree with me, college football is supposed to be played on campus. But understand, A&M did, what was the number? $500 million on their stadium. Mm-hmm. And so, why not play as many games in your stadium as possible as well? Now, I get it. It's probably a recruiting tool for Arkansas. Hey, I know you recruit a lot of kids in Texas, and we're going to play at least 1 game in your home state. And so if your folks ever do have any trouble, which I don't know why they'd have trouble getting up to Fayetteville, but if they do, we're going to play a game in your home state anyway. You can count on that. Everybody's going to come see you. I don't know if that's as big a recruiting tool as it used to be, but it's still something that you can point to, and that's not such an issue for A&M. But And if you're leaving Arkansas to come to a game, it's a lot easier to drive to Dallas than it is down to College Station.
Yep.
All those things. But I just think that again, I think A&M. I know Ross Bjork has expressed before that he's not interested in continuing that contract once it runs out.
Speaking with Olin Buchanan, TexAgs.com. Olin, when you look at Texas A&M and you guys get calls, you get tweets, you get a bunch of reactions and conversation with Texas A&M fans, do you feel like Texas A&M Aggie fans have realistic expectations for their football program?
I do. I think A&M should expect to be, and their fans should expect to be a powerful program. You're an hour from Houston, and all the football players in Houston. You're 2 hours from Dallas, about 2.5 hours from San Antonio. You can play in the powerful SEC. You've got great facilities. You've got great fan support. You've got a coach that's won a national championship. What do you need to be a major player in college football that A&M has not provided? So, I think they should demand excellence. Now, should they demand it? Should they understand that the previous regime left the program in a mess, and it's going to take some time to work it out and fix it? Yeah, you should be smart enough to understand that it's not going to happen overnight here. They seem to me they're making some significant progress in the right direction. But I think any program that has the resources that A&M has should expect to be a much more competitive team than A&M has consistently been since they moved to the SEC. And we know in 2012 A&M was really good. In 2013 they were good, and then they kind of fell off. Mm-hmm. I think that absolutely. Now, again, if you have those fans that are saying, you should win the national championship this year, then I'd say that's unrealistic. If you had fans that say, hey, maybe we can get into the playoffs this year, I think that would be very difficult to do, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. They'd have to win. They have to finish 9-1, and then hope for some luck. And going 9-1, I don't think is something that you should just assume is going to happen. But
especially this year.
Especially this year. I mean, and with what A&M. But I'll say this: I do think A&M will probably be favored in its remaining games. But A&M's good enough to win every one of its remaining games, but they're not good enough to take any win for granted.
So this Saturday night, is there going to be 50,000 people in Kyle Field, Olin?
No, there's going to be the same amount probably that there was at Florida, which was around 24,000. Now what A&M has to do a better job of is quote the social distancing. If you look at Kyle Field, I can't tell you how many seats there are, but there's a vast number in the upper deck end zones. I mean, it's a huge number. Those were empty, and what people were doing where they were, quite frankly, moving from the not so advantageous seats down to better ones.
Switcheroo.
But the report that there were 50,000 plus at that Florida game is just not true. But, makes for a good story.
Okay. Yeah, that was a question that Sam Pittman was asked about in this press conference this week, and you would be the guy to know as far as that goes. Olin Buchanan, TexAgs.com. Great content as far as the Texas A&M Aggies are concerned. Olin, enjoy the game on Saturday night. Hopefully it'll be a barn burner. Before we let you go, who wins and what does the game look like on Saturday night?
I do think A&M probably has better personnel. I think A&M wins the football game. I think it's going to be another crazy game like it always is when A&M and Arkansas plays. I think A&M will probably win, and it's probably by a touchdown or less. The one thing that I think gives you pause is, and I don't want to offend anybody up there, but it sure seems to me the last several years, if you couldn't beat Arkansas, you could count on Arkansas doing something to beat themselves. And it just doesn't, with Bielema and Morris, it just doesn't, for what I've been able to see, it just doesn't seem that they're making those kind of self-inflicted mistakes under Sam Pittman.
You're exactly right. Olin, again, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for waking up a little early, and we'll do this again soon.
All right, thanks for having me on, fellas.
Oh, good stuff from Olin Buchanan, who's been covering the Texas A&M Aggies for quite some time.